we were treated the same by the higher-ups, so the captains and admin.
Okay.
But the sergeants and lieutenants, we were just kind of forgotten about.
It's a common plight with dispatch. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're like what would you call us? We are the forgotten first responders, but we are also the first responders.
Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. Hey Chaplain is the officer wellness podcast, which brings you expertise and wisdom from police officers around the world. Thank you for listening to a podcast today. Podcasts are a fantastic way to learn and to grow, and you can do this while washing the dishes, driving the car, mowing the yard, exercising, and all of the other activities that you can't easily do while watching a YouTube video. So please download all of the past episodes of Hey Chaplain and listen to them while you do your regular routine, and make sure that you listen to some other podcasts. Perhaps you'll stumble upon a great show that you can share with me. I always like to get podcast recommendations from my friends. Today, we are talking again to Deborah Green. She was a California dispatcher for almost 30 years, and in part one of this interview, she told about how she dispatched her deputies to a middle-of-the-night call at a marijuana grow in the forests of California, where they were ambushed by drug cartel gunmen. Now, make sure you go listen to part one to hear how it all went down. In this second part of the interview, we will look at the aftermath of the shooting and what the fallout was for everyone involved, including the dispatchers. Here's Deborah Green. Tell me about the end of your shift and the next few days.
Oh, good Lord. I don't remember much. When I was relieved, my relief got there at 4:30. I went down, sat in the stairwell and cried for about a half an hour just to let it all out. We had a stress debrief right away.
Okay.
I can kind of remember wandering around the building before that, though. Somebody had set up in a conference room. The chaplains were there. Peer support was there. I was amazed at how much had been done and how many people were at the building when I got relieved. Yeah. And I had a peer support person with me within 45 minutes. Because,
Really?
They were trying to find me. I was down in the stairwell. I just wanted to. But I had a peer support person with me, and they were walking with me. And I can remember, I think about an hour after, somebody said, you might want to call your husband. And I said, oh, no. I looked at my watch. I said, it's 5:30. Mr. Green does not get up until 6.
Right.
I want him happy when I tell him this.
Yeah.
I know I called a couple of coworkers or former coworkers that lived nearby that were my support system. Were allowed to accompany the body that morning down to the coroner's office in Sacramento. So we had a procession. So we did that. I came back. I don't think I got to bed. So mind you, I started at 7 p.m. the night before.
Yeah.
And I don't think I got to bed until noon.
Yeah.
So I had made an appointment with my psychiatrist for the next day.
Like an emergency appointment.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I had a peer support person, and she worked about 5 minutes away from my psychiatrist. So I went over and spent 2 hours with her.
I was going to ask if the peer support, did that primarily come from within your own agency, or was it peer support from other agencies?
But I had my own network of people. They brought us back to the office, not the next day, but the day after. So 2 days after and what they did was, instead of having the whole department in a big group, they did dispatch, detectives, patrol. They each had their own group. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot smaller and a lot more intimate as far as what we were talking about, and had therapists with us. And
it's hard to do that with 30 people in the room. It's got to be a smaller group than that. Yeah.
Well, and you know, I mean, the guys don't want to talk about their feelings in front of the girls. As much as
Yeah. Yes. That is a real thing. Yes.
That is a real thing, everyone. Sorry. I know that sounds terrible, but it's the truth. It's just the nature of the beast for this profession.
Yep.
But we had that, and I think that was the last bit. I mean, they kind of kept track of us and such.
Yeah.
During the next couple months, but the long-term stuff really wasn't there. It was all the short-term stuff that was fabulous.
I was going to ask what were the wins out of this? What did the agency do correct? And so it sounds like the short term was very well done.
Very well done.
Very responsive.
The long term, though, out of the 4 deputies that responded, the 1 deputy was killed. 1 deputy was shot, and he was unable to return to his agency. But he kind of got lost in the shuffle because he was on a ride along with our agency. So he wasn't officially on duty, so he couldn't get workman's comp. It was just a whole...
Wow. Yeah.
But he finally got his retirement about 2 years ago, so I was really happy to hear that. Then we had 1 deputy that never returned back to work after his time off. And then the last deputy, he would come back and then leave again and come back and leave again. I was the one who lasted the longest out of that core group, and I was there about a year before workman's comp told me no more. But yeah, so out of our core group, none of us are left.
Tell me about the funeral.
My gosh.
Of the officer.
So previous to that, I'd only been to 1 law enforcement funeral, and it was for a friend of mine that happened to be a dispatcher that passed away, and that had been, good gosh, 20 years prior. 2019 was not a good year. I had been to several processions. And going to funerals it's not my thing. But this one I had to go to.
Yeah.
I mean, it was different because, we're there in uniform and we kind of have to, we can't be blubbering piles of goo on the floor.
Yeah.
Being in the procession on the way back and then having time with the department, we had to, you always have the food after and the fellowship, and just seeing people. And it was the last time I saw a lot of people before I left, but I just kind of felt out of place the whole time. I don't know how to explain it. It was like, you guys are in my department, but a lot of you just don't understand what I've just been through,
Yeah.
And you don't want to sit there and talk about it. And the people that were with you in that group, they're having their own issues on top of that. So you don't want to sit in that little group and just talk about it. So it was difficult, and I left early and just came home. One thing that was really hard, and it maybe not just the funeral, because I really don't remember much of it. But this happened in 2019, and then in 2020, we went into COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
And trying to get better and do things for yourself when you have to stay inside 4 walls all the time.
Yeah.
Really,
isolated from everyone.
Sucked.
Yep.
And I didn't have, initially for the first few months, I didn't have a therapist because they hadn't gotten into that telehealth stuff yet.
Yeah.
So they were still trying to work their way through that. And so it was quite a while before I could get a therapist. And then even then, when I was on workman's comp later in the year, it was still over the phone. I didn't have the face-to-face.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard, just looking at somebody makes a difference rather than just hearing their voice.
Sure.
That was really hard. But a funeral was easy compared to the rest of it.
Yeah.
In 2015, I had open heart surgery
Oh, wow.
to have my aortic valve replaced.
Wow. Okay.
So I had my 12 weeks of FMLA, and I came back to work. I have been diagnosed, well, not diagnosed, I've kind of self-diagnosed. There's a condition called post-perfusion syndrome.
Okay.
Which is common with people that have been put on bypass machines. And it doesn't rear its ugly head till about 6 months after surgery. How do I explain this? I know I had depression and anxiety before, but it exploded. I mean, it was like tenfold worse than what I had before. Where before I could kind of control it,
Right.
But this time it was like, no. And I had a couple of my coworkers who were dear friends have an intervention. And they said, you need to get help. So this is where I started my mental health journey.
Post-surgery, you had the anxiety and the depression amplified from the surgery.
Yes.
Okay.
And so for several years, I was going to a support group for that. Not necessarily for first responders, but it was through Kaiser, and it was a weekly support group that I went to. I also did some classes through Kaiser. So I went to anxiety classes and depression classes and work stress classes and learned all those coping mechanisms along the way. If I hadn't had all these coping mechanisms and resources, what I would have actually happened to me in October 2019.
Yeah.
How worse I could have been.
Did you see a difference in how the deputies on scene, the SWAT team, did you see a difference in how the sworn officers were treated versus how dispatchers were treated? Or did you feel like your agency? Okay. I was going to ask, feel it was the same or feel it was different? How was it different?
We were treated the same by the higher ups, so the captains and admin.
Okay.
But the sergeants and lieutenants, we were just kind of forgotten about.
It's a common plight with dispatch. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're like what would you call us? We are the forgotten first responders, but we are also the first responders.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
Yep. Well, you're out of sight, out of mind. And,
right.
And that creates a problem in helping the mental health of dispatchers because you weren't on scene. And they'll ask, well, let's make sure everybody on scene is in this debrief.
Right.
And then the dispatchers are completely ignored.
Well, and we're like, wait a minute, but we were the ones,
Yes.
We're the ones coordinating everything. What the heck?
Yeah. Well, and you were listening in.
Yes.
You were kind of on scene. It just it's in a different way. And that disconnect, sometimes people even work with you will forget that you were involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you were removed physically.
Yes.
Right.
I had been on a call. It was a prowler call, and it was some guy that had been just going into people's neighborhoods and stuff. We had multiple calls on this guy. So I'm on the phone with this lady, and the guy starts breaking into her house, and her husband goes to get a gun. So I'm like I'm telling the deputies, this updated information as quickly as I can. And they're not realizing that I'm, oh, she's still on the phone with them. Not realizing that we stay on the phone.
Yeah.
With situations like this. Some agencies don't. They just, okay, thank you, bye. But yeah, we, being smaller agency, you can stay on the phone until the deputy arrives and get that updated information. So yeah, I listened to her husband shoot the guy. So yeah, they don't realize that what we are actually doing. And it just, it's up to us to educate them.
Yeah. It's a gentle reminder is needed pretty regularly. And because like I said, there's a lot of people with really good intentions that are running a peer support group, or they're a chaplain or somebody else, and they just need to be reminded, don't forget the dispatchers.
Right.
What should your agency have also done that could have helped? And maybe retention of everybody, maybe that wasn't in the cards, but what could they have done to have improved things?
I think for the core group, and by the core group, I mean myself and the 4 deputies that were initial response.
Right.
There should have been more attention to what was going on with our mental health. I was showing PTSD symptoms within 2 months. I mean, I was just angry at the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of grief also, but there was a lot more that was going on with that. And the supervisor I had was not trauma informed. So she took me down the disciplinary route rather than getting me the help that I needed. And it wasn't until, August of 2020, when I had another supervisor looked at me and said, "You need help. Here's a stack of papers for workman's comp. Fill them out. There's a phone right there. You call who you need to call to get this rolling." Because we had a procedure that we had to do. If anybody's aware, it was called the company nurse, and you had to call the company nurse and get this whole ball started rolling. They immediately put me on light duty after that.
What was light duty in your communication center? Like just administrative stuff?
40 hours only. 40 hours only, no radio.
So you're still on the radio?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you're not on the radio.
I was all call taking. If you look at it, and maybe some of the dispatchers will agree with me, I think call taking is harder on anybody with PTSD issues than it is working the radio. Because you're still doing that one-on-one with people that are going through a trauma, and you've been through a trauma, and it's just not good.
Yeah. Well, apart from officer injuries and deaths, I would think the most traumatic things would come from call taking.
Oh, absolutely. Listening. I mean, I've listened to a person getting stabbed. I've listened to somebody that has gotten shot. I have been on the phone with people that have had to shoot intruders.
Yeah, people have found dead loved ones. And,
yes.
Yeah.
So to me, that's more traumatic than it is on the radio doing a traffic stop. Administrations need to start making this a normal thing. And maybe having 1 or 2 therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists on staff or at the ready in case they are needed. A small agency like ours, we could have had 2 therapists available just for emergency purposes, just to get that initial stuff going and get that person on the right track to get help. And so, that's another thing that I'm trying to push is, let's get these people on staff and get culturally competent therapists out there that know how to deal with first responders and veterans. Go find that person that you click with. It may take 2 tries. It may take 3 tries. It may take 10 tries. Find that person. Go see them once every 3 months, once every 6 months. But establish that relationship with them so when the poo hits the fan, you have that person that you can go to that you're established with, and you can get treatment right away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole premise behind a good first responder chaplain is that you're already established with them.
Mm-hmm.
You've already built rapport with them.
Right.
And so you have another helper that you already know. They already know you. You already know if you click. You don't have to figure that out while you're traumatized.
Right.
You can already sort that kind of stuff out in advance. And so same thing with the therapist. Same thing with counselors and mentors and other helpers. Figure that out from the get-go. We had a debrief recently in our agency where one of the officers walked in the room and realized, oh no, this is a circle meeting. And he goes, I don't want to do a circle meeting. And he felt like he'd been tricked into coming to a circle meeting. And I think he even said something like, they told me this wasn't going to be a circle, I mean, come on. If you've been doing this, like you said, maybe more than a year, you need to get into one of those circle meetings and get over it. And whatever you think it's going to be, it's never that bad. But, and most people, they say they don't want to go and they resist it. But if you make them go, they realize, hey, yeah, I'd actually like to hear what the others have to say. And I might eventually want to open up myself.
The Deputy Sheriff's Association, the union for the the deputies were able to find a scholarship for me to go to a trauma retreat in 2020, which was fantastic. And I do recommend for anybody that can go, West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat is one of the better ones.
Okay. All right. So you've done that. See, we have those in Kansas City.
Well, I did a different one. West Coast, there's in California, it's done in Southern California. But there was actually a group that did one near me. So I was able to go to that one, which was great.
Why was it great for you?
It was a smaller group of people that had gone through, that were also, had gone through traumas. But they showed us how to coping mechanisms and exercises to help with the panic attacks, with the anxiety. We went through some different types of therapies. That's where I found brain spotting, which is similar to EMDR. Okay. And that really worked. I had one session there and I was great for about a month.
Wow.
I mean, it was just awesome. I mean, she literally took me into a panic attack and walked me right out of it.
Talk to me about the power of our story.
The power of our story. Oh my gosh. It's an online kind of a peer support group. We have like 1 hour group get-togethers and it's all online, which is even better, so that you're talking to people, like-minded individuals, veterans and first responders, talking about your issues and learning some skills. And every once in a while, we have some speakers that come in and talk. And I've been doing this for about a year now, and my husband has seen such a big difference in me, being able to have that outlet once a week. There's several different days and times that they meet, and so it's convenient for lots of people. The founder, she lives in San Diego. The facilitator for the group I'm in, who lives in Michigan. There's one in Idaho. We have people that are in Maryland. We have people in North Carolina, San Diego. I mean, all over. It's wonderful.
That's fantastic. How do people find a group like that?
I think there's stuff with First Help. I don't know if you're familiar with that group.
Yes.
Also, I think Warriors Rest may have some resources. It's easier to have such, I mean, we're across the country. We have even people in Canada that come on the calls.
So having a support group online facilitates it happening, where sometimes you try to get a just messed up kind of group together. It's not AA. It's not what it's like, hey, we're just messed up. I'm editing there. But you try to get a group like that together at an agency, and you may only get 2 or 3 people to show up.
Right.
And that's very frustrating, where if you can draw from a larger group by going online, you can count on having a meeting when you need it.
Exactly. And with the different times, it really helps, So like the one I go to for me is at 12:30 in the afternoon on a Friday. There's also one tonight at 6:00 my time. So, I mean, it's just different times, different days. And yeah, it's great.
Now, that group put together a book.
Yes, they did.
Wounds to Wisdom.
It's 29 of our members that wrote down their stories.
Okay.
Of trauma. And yeah, I read the whole book, and there were portions where I cried a lot.
And you're not in the book. But
I'm not in the book, no, but it's, I hope to be. I mean, we're planning on more of these types coming out. So
that's excellent.
So I'm hoping that I get my chance to be in, which would be great.
So if a cop or a dispatcher or any other first responders listening to this, and they've been through something that has traumatized them, and they're starting to see the disorder, the dysfunction, that's affecting their life, and it could be affecting any area of their life, but it is starting to affect them. What should they do first?
Reach out to somebody, whether it's peer support. We're lucky to have 988 now. And that's not just for suicide prevention. That's just to have somebody to talk to. First Responder Support Network has a list of resources for people. There is one that you can text.
Yeah.
That will have somebody call you. That's for law enforcement, first responders. Warriors Rest is a good one. If you want to go to a trauma retreat, First Help has retreats. West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat. There's lots out there, but the first thing to do is reach out, whether it's to your peer support, to your supervisor, or even just call for a therapist.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for coming on and telling your story. And thank you for having so much interest and passion about helping others, too.
Well, that's my passion right now, is to make sure that I'm the person that I didn't have when I was going through this.
I'm so grateful for Deborah and her story, and especially for the many resources that she recommended, many of which she's been able to benefit from personally herself. But I really feel that some of the best advice that she gave was for the proactive approach of developing a relationship with a helper, a counselor, a chaplain, a group, whatever it is, but develop that relationship before the crisis. You could be developing a pattern and a routine of dealing with the smaller traumas before the critical incident. So go ahead and take some time and attend one of those group meetings, or sign up for a single session with a counselor, or maybe take your department chaplain out for a cup of coffee. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
A buddy of mine who had retired a year or so before happened to be down there, and he lived somewhat close to me. And he told me, I'll get you home, because I'll still be around, so I'll get you home. So I went home with a friend. My work didn't have it covered. Afterwards, I thought about all that. And you don't get your retirement credits on that day either. They mail them to you sometime later. It took 3 months for me to get any identification. So I get home, and I'm talking to my wife, and I'm like, you know, I said, if they fired me today, it would have gone exactly the same way. Not one thing different. Not one thing different between being fired and retiring after giving them almost 15 years.
Yeah.
This show is free for everyone because of those supporters who are quietly helping behind the scenes. If you want to help this show reach more cops, chaplains, and other first responders around the world, please follow the link in the episode description to support the show. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.